The rest of it. 128. But this is sunshine.
What number is hard?
And then
Three,
the hardest. I place that time.
but that's the way the referees do three.
We are going to get started in about 20 minutes. Thank you.
It's right there. There's Celestine. Hi. All right.
Or another call and never talk to strangers.
That's okay. Give her a piece of paper over there.
I
All right. Hi, everybody.
know you have a responsibility.
How's it going?
Okay, side out.
Of course.
Happy Juneteenth. I've been saying that all day. Happy Juneteenth.
Emancipation.
Are we rolling? Rolling, roll high. Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to this Story Slam, produced by Storytelling Arts of Indiana and Freetown Village. Welcome. I'm glad you decided to come in here and cool off instead of being out there in the heat, working in your gardens, which is tonight's thing. I would like to thank our sponsors, Maestro Organizing and WFYI. Now, I'm going to go over the rules because I know you know them, but just in case, we have prizes, cash money, moolah. So your story should be 5 minutes in length or less. It should be a true story told in the first person. But I say to you, unless I see your nose growing, how will I know? Okay? So that's how we know you are really GOOD at telling stories. At any rate, I want you to know that I don't garden. Do not drive past my house tonight. All of my flower beds are yucky. As a matter of fact, my weeds are taller than my plants. And I feel real bad about it. So when I drive into my garage, I turn this way. So I don't see what's over there. But I'm going to find somebody who's going to come into my yard and finish up my flower beds. I remember back in the day, I would cut the grass. I would plant the flowers. I would rake the leaves. Now I just close my eyes and I'm glad that I'm not part of the neighborhood association that wants me to rake my leaves and cut down the weeds. But now, if you have a story about your gardening adventures, we want to hear it tonight. We do have a timer. Miss Ophelia, you see our timer tonight? She will let you know when you get to 4 minutes, so you know what parts to leave out, speed up, and finish your tale. Now, we don't mind you taking a long time to tell it, but we do want you to know that if it takes you that long to tell your story, we're going to take some points off. And so you may not get the grand prize. And everybody wants the grand prize, even me. And I'm not in the contest. So let me reach into the lime green basket. It's green for spring. And all of them are folded up. And I'm gonna tell you what's gonna happen. I'm sort of like a mind reader this way. That when you hear one story, it's gonna make you think of another story. And when you think about that story, you're going to want to grab a slip of paper. She's got a pen as well. Sign up, and we'll take your name throughout the course of the night. Don't make me come over there and shame you into telling the story now, okay? But our first story about gardens, you know, I think they're all kind of gardens, aren't they? Now, somebody told me to put some plastic flowers in my flower pots. I am too snobby for that, okay? Don't do it. But right now, Russell Ridgway is going to be our first teller to talk to us about gardens. Russell, come on down.
So this is gonna go great. I thought the theme was karma. I think that's happening right now. I don't live here. I grew up in North Central Indiana, in an overtly self-righteous, predominantly prejudiced, far-right religious community. I mostly love the people while broadly disagreeing with their ideals. So my story is about karma as a 50-year-old, nearly 50-year-old white male, having grown up and unfortunately and innately picking up some of those ideas along the way. I don't live here anymore. I live in Europe. I haven't lived in Indiana since '94, but I'm back for the summer and I'm working in construction. I work in drywall. And we were trying to finish a project I was working on a Saturday morning, and I had gone to lunch at the White Castle in Kokomo, because we don't get a lot of fast food where I live. So White Castle seemed like a great choice. So I'm at White Castle, I go in, I get my food, I come back out to the car. Now my car it's a work truck. Now, I know work trucks, work vehicles can mean a lot of things, right? Like a politician has a work vehicle, right? He's got the guys running along the side, bulletproof windows and such. Uber drivers, sales reps, the UPS guy, all the delivery drivers. But I work for a small construction company in North Central Indiana. So my construction vehicle is a 2006 Chrysler Town and Country van with full power and a sunroof and the original equipment entertainment system, most of which do not work. But that's my work vehicle. And so I come back out to my work vehicle and the right front tire is flat. But not just a little flat, not like I can drive across the street and get some air. I mean, flat, you know, like, look at the tire. I'm like, okay, I'm going to slide down these sliders and then fix a fucking flat, right? I know it's called fix a flat, but trust me, the branding is much better than fix a fucking flat, because if you have to fix a flat, there are always some bucks involved, whether you hear them or So I sit down in the car, I slide down my sliders, and I go out to fix my tire. And I open the back, and my Chrysler Town and Construction model, and get out to Jack, put it in the thing. I'm looking for the tire, the spare tire. The spare tire is under the carriage of the car, like between the two front seats. All right, cool. So I get in there and got to build this thing. And so I'm sitting in the driver's seat, and I'm reaching above my head to turn this wrench because it has to clear the driver's side, the passenger side, the dash, and the center console. So I'm reaching above my head, turning this wrench to lower a tire that's already below me. That's fine, I get that out, but then I think, oh yeah, you're supposed to loosen the lug nuts. So I get back out of the car, I go over to the tire, I start looking for the lug nut, and there's no lug nut wrench in the car. Okay, so I check Google Maps, there's a Valvoline service center just across the street. Now, across the street in Kokomo means across Markland Avenue, hashtag Marked Man Avenue, because it's 4 lanes with 2 turn lanes, and I've got to cross this, and there's no crosswalk. So I cross Marked Man Avenue to the Valvoline station, and I speak to the man, I'm like, explain to him the situation. He's like, sure, no problem. And I think I'm just going to borrow a few tools. I think I'm just going to borrow a few tools and go back and change the tire myself. So he hollers down to the pit crew, and this woman comes up. She's a 20-something-year-old blonde girl. And she begins asking me questions about the car and gathers up the tools. And I think I'm just going to take the tools over and change the tire myself. No. She grabs 2 different size lug nuts, 2 different torque wrenches, a torque bar under her shirt, and an impact. And we start to cross Marked Man Avenue back to my car. And I said, can I carry something? And she said, sure. And she handed me the 2 lug nuts. It's like, okay, cool, I got it, so they felt like 2 weightless balls, but I got it, I carried those back. We go across the car, we get to the car. She begins to unloosen them, and she says, do you have a jack? I said, yeah. I put the jack down. She started to raise it, and I had put it in the wrong place. Now I have every tool in my car to do anything you could possibly need to do with drywall. But I don't have anything to change the tire. She says, do you need some help? I said, sure. She gets down there, places the jack, has the car raised up, and is taking the tire off. I go back around, because remember, I lowered the car, the spare tire. I go back around, and I'm trying to fix it. And I'm familiar with the one where you turn the thing sideways and pull it up. This is a new, at least in 2006, it was new plastic deal that I don't know how to do. And I'm down there on all fours trying to figure this out, and I just see a shadow coming behind. And it comes up, I'm down there on all fours, and I hear the footsteps. And she says, do you need some help? Yes. She hops down, boom, she's got it off, back around, puts it on. And I have the audacity to ask her, you need to ride back to the shop? She says, I'm good. I said, okay. I got back into my car and I drove back to work. And I just thought to myself, I remember a lesson that I've been taught so many times. The most important thing that karma can teach you is that in any situation, you always have to have the right tools. Thank you.
I can't believe you did not give her a ride back to the station. At any rate, listen, Russell, if you think about a gardening story later, come on. All right. That's the spirit, I want you to know that tomorrow night, Freetown Village is hosting the Evolution of Hip Hop Culture in Indianapolis, featuring Wild Style Pascal, at Indiana Landmark Center from 6 to 7:30 p.m. I might be awake by then. You will also want to know that Storytelling Arts of Indiana is hosting the annual Lions Contest during the Indiana State Fair. You know, it's held at the Pioneer Village on August 9th, starting at 7 p.m. And there are 2 categories for adults and for children. So I want you to know that start thinking about those tall tales right now. I'm going to reach into this lime green bucket basket and pull out another name.
Yeah.
And yes, our theme is about gardens. And this is folded up. I always get the folded up. You know, they come out first. But right now, we want to hear Faye Black tell her story about gardens. You might want to know that cash prizes at Pioneer Village for our Liars contest starts at $100, $50, and $25. And the categories are adults and children. And it has to be 5 minutes or less. And if you want more information about that, check out our website. Here you go, Peg. Come on, move it out your way.
Okay. So, hello. Not much of a gardener, so this is gonna be sort of hit and miss. All right. When I was a kid, I lived in West Lafayette in a prefab house that my dad helped build. We lived across the street, that was Airport Road, and right after the airport, and right across the street from us was a community garden. So my mom and dad had things, you know, planted to be growing in that community garden. So they go over there every now and then to pick something, and of course tag along. I want to see what was going on, so I tagged along. I was gonna help. Right. Okay. They put up with a little bit of help, and after a while they said, you know, there's some sweet snap sugar peas over there. Why don't you pick some of those and try them? You'll probably like them. So that got rid of me. And I went over and tried them. I loved them. That's all I did for the rest of the day, sit over there and eat sugar snap peas. So great help I was. So that was the first thing I did. Then after a while, our family moved out to Oxford. And Oxford is about 20 miles north of Lafayette. Built a new house, and my mom and my dad wanted to have a garden each. One had vegetables and one had flowers. My mom had flowers, and she liked to do, you know, rhododendrons and tulips and pines, as we call them, and stuff like that. Crocus. Well, that looked fun to me. Oh, those are pretty. Could I do that? She said, sure. So I think you should try marigolds, she says. She thinks that's easy to grow. So, okay. She got me some seeds. I bought some marigolds. I planted them in, and I looked at them. Are they going to go start growing now? I waited. I thought I put them in wrong. She said, no, you just have to wait. I don't want to wait. I want to see them now. I finally waited long enough. They started coming up, and pretty soon I had some pretty orange and yellow flowers. And they smelled good and they looked good. I was so proud of myself. I actually grew something all by myself. Wow, that was great. Okay. Well, you know, for a while after that, I didn't do much more in the way of growing things. But after a while, when I was a little more grown up, I found out that I could grow my own tomatoes. So I bought some tomato plants and planted them out in my backyard. And I just thought that was great. I looked after them. I never to water them. I went back there. And after a while, I just completely forgot them. And of course, I didn't have a chance. I still did get a few small green tomatoes that I brought in and put on my windowsill and waited for them to turn red, which only a couple of them did. It's just not the same thing. I guess I'm not really cut out to be a gardener. So I thought, well, we'll try something else. I'll pick berries. So I thought, well, why don't we try strawberries? I love strawberries. So I'll go pick strawberries. And that's, a lot of being on the ground and getting them and loading up all this stuff. Fine. I did that for a while and I did okay. But as I got older, it got harder to get down and up off the ground to get the strawberries. So I just plopped myself down a spot, took all the strawberries I could reach, and spent 5 or 10 minutes trying to get myself back up again. So I never did get very many strawberries. So I switched to blueberries. Much easier to pick. I had a friend named Jane who wanted to pick blueberries in Michigan. So I said, sure, we'll go. Now, Michigan, those berry bushes are really tall, and the berries are enormous. So, all right, I went out there and put my bucket under the branch I was on, and just raked them in. Easy to pick than I ever did. That was so easy, I took way too many berries home. So I shared them with everybody else. And I picked some berries, multiple berries, in Tippecanoe County, too. In Tippecanoe County, they had a farm out there where my dad and I wanted to go pick berries. So we went and picked berries, and he always got more than I did. I was too busy doing what I always did, eating them. But we did have a good time together, and I discovered that I really wasn't a gardener, but I sure like to eat what gardeners would.
Those bushes might have been taller than you. I feel bad that I haven't started my garden yet. Because I think there's still time for me to plant something and it will grow. But I know it's not going to happen. So I just go around and visit all my friends who plant too much. And I take green tomatoes off their hands. I take red tomatoes off their hands. I take cucumbers off their hands. I let them keep the zucchini because I've never been a big fan of zucchini. But I hear there's a good zucchini bread you can make, so maybe next time I'll get a couple of those. Well, if you have a story that reminded you of, don't forget to come on and get a handy dandy slip and fill out your name. Let me reach you to the lime green basket. Because our next teller is Tracy Wolf. Tracy! Yay!
Thank you. I don't know why I brought my purse up here. I'll just put it right. I got my hand, by the way. Okay. So my story is called Man versus Poppy versus the Hostas. So I am not a natural gardener. I do not have a green thumb at all, but all my life I've been surrounded by gardening types. My mother loved to plant annuals every spring, every summer. My dad loved his vegetable garden. One of our beloved pictures of him is from the 80s, and he's standing next to his tomato cages in a very strange hat. It was the 80s, so be fair. And he's got the tomato cages right up next to him, and the plants are like up to his chin. We ate so many tomatoes that year, but I'm sure he loved every single one of them. My husband's family are also perennial gardeners, so they do a lot of gardening as well. My husband has the bug. So about 8 or 9 years ago, Grandma Mildred gave him a division of her hostas. And he planted those underneath a large hickory nut tree in our backyard, like in a ring around them. So they, as a lot of these plants are that come down to us, they get bequeathed by family members. They are in our memory as so-and-so's plant. So Grandma Mildred's hostas live underneath the tree. And after a few years, we get a dog. And her name is Poppy. And after about a year living at our house, Poppy discovers squirrels. And Poppy loves herself some squirrels. And she will spend her whole day running around the tree, right? Because squirrels love to bring out trees because, squirrel nuts. And the hostas are getting trampled. They're getting wrecked. And my husband is distraught because this dog, who he kind of didn't really want in the first place when I had talked him into it, is destroying a very sentimental heirloom. So I told him, babe, why don't we just move the hostas? He had an entirely different idea. And so begins the story of man versus Poppy versus hostas. The first thing he did was he got one of those little wire fences, those little black wire fences with the loop and the little sticks, and he put that around. And that actually worked for a couple of years because Poppy, despite being loony for squirrels, is a pretty obedient dog. But what ended up happening was she expanded her ring outside of the rail, and so she just started running around that, and then she got that all muddy. And then, of course, with dust and dirt, and so she would come in when you would finally force her to come in with a treat or a stick or some treat that would make her come in. She would just be like encrusted with mud sickles. It was gross. So, of course, I'm responsible for that bath because A, I made him get the dog, and B, experimental use hospice. So, taking care of that. Then, after about a year and a half, one day I look out, I hear like a noise, and I look out, look down, and the dog's up against the bark like this. And there's a squirrel up on the branch, and the squirrel's going, and the tail's going like this, and the dog's going, like, okay, we've had a breach. So he found where she had broken the fence and put it back, reinstalled it by carefully wiggling it in place, as one does. And then he also put like some mulch, leaf mulch, in front of that ring that Poppy had made so that she would no longer bring in mud. Yeah, now she was bringing in mud and leaf crud. So she just was like, if she was a poodle mix, and I don't know if you know what poodle mix is, but their fur is real like grippy. So she was like all that crap in her fur all the time. But again, hostas were safe until this winter, when she finally decided, what am I doing with this fence? This is a joke. So she's just constantly getting in and out of the fence. The hostas weren't up yet, so we didn't have to worry about that, but time was ticking, right? We had to come up with a solution. All other measures had failed. What could we possibly do? What's the one move we could have made the whole time that we didn't make? Yeah, about 2 months later, he moved the hostas. So now they reside in front of the deck steps, and they reside in front of one of our trees. So we've solved many problems. Poppy gets to do whatever she wants. She gets to spend her blissful days running around that tree. I don't know how she isn't like a tire and a roundabout on the side. I don't have to wash her all the time. My husband doesn't have to worry about the hostas. And we may have proved that I know a little something about gardening after all. Thank you.
I was gardening first. I know that should have given you an idea. People are always telling me stuff I need to do in the garden. If I had a garden, I would do it. Like, I love reading about how you're supposed to take Irish sprig and grate it up and toss it among your flowers and keep out deer and other rodents. Good luck trying to find some Irish sprig. Irish sprig, that's what it is, Irish sprig. Or mothballs, then it'll rain. I have friends who have pastas that she calls deer salad. Because no matter how many times they have them treated, the deer come and make a salad out of them and the garden's gone. But I'm going to reach in here into this lime green basket and I'm going to pull out another name. I thought I had two, so only one. But hey, it's Chat Flack who's going to tell us our next story about gardens.
My apartment in Detroit was in this long red brick 4-story building, kind of like my dorm in college. This had like an L shape, And there was a little courtyard in the crook of that L. And in that little garden, as usual, you never quite knew what you might find coming up. And one day, just climbing right up the bricks of that of the building were two brightly patterned young women going right up the bricks. And if you've ever had the TV on a sports channel and like climbing has been on and you see these lithe, trim figures pulling their way up a rock, you know how glorious that is. And I shook myself out of just admiring them long enough to say, why are you doing that? And I was so glad I did. One of them, turns out, was my brand new neighbor right down the hall. Her friend was helping move, and they were scaling the wall because they had already learned the way our doors could swing shut and lock without key. So I said, well, listen, you're doing this the hard way. Come on back down. We went inside, and I got my college meal card, which I've kept, because it's a little thinner than a credit card, and it's bendy but kind of stiff. Nothing else works so well. And once they were back in her apartment, I also said, well, look, if as it seems this might be your first place of your own in Detroit, maybe you've got mixed feelings about seeing how easy it is for any clown with a card to open your door. If you notice, the card doesn't do that to my door, and that's because when I moved in, I walked to the hardware store down the street and I bought a modern lock set, brought it back, put it in myself. And that was 1986, and I've had no issues since then. Our dear absentee landlord has never said a peep or probably even noticed. And if he does, we'll work something out. But until then, I know how many keys I made and who hasn't. I know a card doesn't get in my door. If you like the sound of that, I'm happy to walk down the hardware and show which kind of lock you can buy and help you put it in. And she became like my all-time favorite neighbor in that building. She was a quaint sage and like quick-witted and generous and funny and just great to have around. But she never took me up on changing that lock. And she learned to use her own card to get in when she went off without the key. And I would see her coming back and doing that with study groups or groups of friends and their friends and a couple of people whose names you never quite get who show up with your friends' friends. And maybe the good news is for how long there wasn't any problem. And then one evening I kind of ran down the hall to the sound of her dismay when she came home to her cleaned out apartment. And I mean like moving day, like her TV, stereo, music, outfits, kitchenware, appliances, just gone. And she felt super violated, right? These things didn't just evaporate. There was somebody in her place. It had to have taken most of the day. And she made two decisions right there on the spot. One was that she could never feel safe in our building again, so she would go look for another place right away. And I would lose my favorite neighbor, and she would take her chances someplace else. But on the bright side, very low packing and moving expense. And the second thing was she was going to buy a gun. Because now the thing that had changed was that she felt unsafe and the gun was going to fix that. And it all seemed to me just so much more complicated than if I had just, on that first day back in the garden, been more of a nag about changing that lock. Thank you.
Yeah, I can't see you nagging anybody. Listen. Wow. I'm going to remember that. Because you should harass somebody into doing the right thing. So they look at Rob and you won't get your favorite neighbor. You might want to know that our next story slam is July 17th. at Ralston's on Mass Avenue. And the theme is scammers and Samaritans. I don't have to go back in the story or not, but scammers and Samaritans. Now that would be good for the next session. You had a good Samaritan in your story, Russell. All right, and we'll pretend like we never heard it before. But I'm going to reach into this line green basket, a little empty in there. And I'm going to call Francis Whitener to come on up.
Hold it up.
I had an uncle named Uncle Stephen. He was the son of Grandmama Mitchell and Granddaddy Mitchell. Grandmama, we always call her Grandmama Pat. He enlisted in the Navy at the end, near the end of World War II. And unfortunately, he was killed in a plane crash during the 1940s. This was a terrible blow to Grandma, Granddaddy, and to my mother, his younger sister. They grieved over Uncle Stephen's loss. Grandma went out and planted some flowers in her backyard. She enjoyed gardening anyway, but she decided to establish an area which she named Stephen's Garden. And in Stephen's Garden, she placed some boxwood, which held up well in Virginia where this took place. And she put in some azaleas. The azaleas were some red, another other ones of them were more of a dark pinkish purple. And then she planted some daffodils, yellow daffodils, white daffodils, ones that were a combination of yellow and white. And she waited for them to come up in spring. This was something that she looked forward to so much. And when they did come up in the spring, the daffodils looked so beautiful, and the azaleas looked so beautiful that she decided to plant some more. So she planted more around her garden until the garden became the entire backyard. It was a huge garden, and she healed so much from Uncle Stephen's death as she watched the flowers bloom and she could get out there and work with them. Since that time, I have planted daffodils in 2 of my yards. The last place that we lived, I put the daffodils out, and I noticed that just as they had in Grandmama's yard, they bloomed not just where I planted them, but they spread across the backyard. And we have moved to another house now, and I planted daffodils there. And I hope so much that they will spread as well. Grandmama Pat died a number of years ago. She was 99 years old. But I know that every spring, when the daffodils bloom, Grandmama looks down and smiles.
Thank you. I was talking to a friend of mine in Massachusetts, and she just lost her sister recently. And one of the things she talked about was that her sister Judy had a garden, and she loved to garden. And there were flowers all around the inside of the picket fence. And neighbors would walk by and explain about the beauty of that garden. And Judy passed, and people are saddened because the flowers are not there in the front of the house like they used to be. And that reminded me of that story. Thank you so much, Francis. Anybody else got another story about a garden? Russell?
You want a story about a garden? I get to go twice?
Yeah.
About a garden.
Come on. Two different subjects, huh? When they count.
It's totally off the cuff. My grandmother passed away at 92. Just this past fall, and she used to live by the train tracks in Converse, Indiana, and she always had a garden. And I remember as a little kid going out there and working in the garden with her. And I'm supposed to be honest, right? I can't say that I enjoyed it. You know, it was dig here, do this, pull that, do the other thing. You know, she was already 60 or something and just standing there and spouting out directions of what I should or shouldn't do. But there was these train tracks, and there were always rabbits. Every time I see rabbits, I always think about my grandmother. And so we'd be out there, we're working in the garden. And then, you know, I don't know, fast forward 20 years, I've grown up, moved on, and I went to school in Knoxville, Tennessee. 22 years old. Moved into a house after I graduated, and the first thing I did was put in a garden. You know? I don't even like vegetables that much. But I put in a garden, you know, so whatever, and I'm still on a timer, so I can't tell you everything about that garden, but I nearly blew up the house one day trying to do some mulch. I thought you could just burn the leaves. So I poured the gas all over it and I lit the match. It was not good. I moved from there down to Texas, on the border in Brownsville, Texas. I never thought about this tonight, so it's your fault. And I moved into a house, I put it in a garden. Like that's what you do, especially if you're from North Central Indiana. So I put in a garden in Texas. I didn't blow anything up that time. Not much grows in Texas, but I had some really nice lime trees and avocado trees. I moved from Texas to Budapest, Hungary. I moved into a house, and I'll be damned. I put in a garden. There was fire involved again this time, though. We kind of burned, like a little burn pile in the backyard, and we were burning it one night. And really, when I'd been there 6 months, I didn't speak Hungarian at that time. And the neighbor lady started shouting at me that I can't have a fire there. I mean, I don't know that that's what she was saying, but I'm pretty sure after dark, building a fire in the neighborhood is not such a great idea, especially if you just moved there and it's a foreign country. And so, long story, I had immigration and lots of other things. It's a big deal, lots of places, not just here, just saying. And it sucks everywhere. I'm all for open borders. That's my political speech. But I ended up back in North Central Indiana at the start of the pandemic. And two of my sons were with me. And, everybody here was old enough to know what was going on. And I said, you know what? Let's do a garden. And I called my grandmother. I said, hey, Granny, we're putting in a garden. Is there anything you'd want to do? Now, here's where it gets good, because, you can't go anywhere. My grandma's, I don't know, like 90, 88, I guess I'm a little shaky with math. Great at English, not so much with math, but, so she's 88. I'm there with my 2 teenage sons, and we're putting in the garden, and my grandmother would drive 8 miles from Congress out to the house in the country, park in the driveway, walk over there with her little 4-point cane, sit down on a chair that she had brought, and tell me and both of my grandsons what needed to be pulled, what needed to be planted, and how everything should go. And so, if you ask me about gardens, the first thing I think of is my grandmother. And not that, there's just something about that. I think there's just something about your hands in soil, about making something grow, about the impetus that you have and the care that it takes. And I think that gardening is not just a thing that we do, but it's a theme for life. Everything that we do takes a little water, the right kind of soil, and a little bit of sun. Thank you.
I love it. Is there anybody else?
I will.
All right. That was really good. That was really good. Who else is gonna tell the story? Stephanie Janice. Oh, no. Come on down. Stephanie Edwards.
My story is not sweet like his. Several years ago, part of my problem is sometimes I watch HGTV and all those DIY things. And I said, oh, I like to learn, but I can't really get on my knees. I got knee replacements. So I need something to stand up. And one of my very good friends said, oh, we can build you one of those. And he and his daughter came over, they put it in the yard. And that first year, I bought all kind of wonderful green things and dirt and had sage and basil and all kind of shit growing back there. I said, oh man, I took pictures of it because it was all beautiful. Well, next year, I got busy and the stuff that was in it the year before started growing again. I said, well, I don't have to do anything to that, you know. That's how sage and basil kept coming up. The next year, I was really busy. And so I didn't do anything with it. And I looked out there this year and there's some kind of weed that's about this tall that's growing in it. And I told myself, oh, I'm gonna get out there and my grandkids are gonna help me dig up stuff. And I can tell my grandkids been here, pick up, do this. But that hasn't happened yet because I've been busy. But I looked across the street today and my neighbor had some guys in her yard. They had put rocks around the tree, they trimmed everything. And I said, man, that is so beautiful. I'm gonna ask them to kind of work on my yard next time. And they left them, so I knew they'd be back tomorrow. Well, meanwhile, I'm taking my baked goods down to my daughter's restaurant so I can leave them. And I'm zooming up that little exit that goes to Fletcher off of 70. And these people, the traffic was stopped over here on 70, but on this little stretch, you can kind of go quick. And so I'm going quick. And I noticed that the truck in front of me was the guys that were working on her yard. And they were zooming, they had this tractor, little trailer thing behind them. And they're zooming. And all of a sudden, this trailer, this tractor, came off the truck, flipped across the highway, rocks went everywhere, cars were stopped. And I said, hell, I'm never that car this year.
Yeah, I win. Okay, Jennifer Clee. Thanks. It's going to be our next seller. That's hilarious.
I jumped in front of Donna. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't have Donna. Donna Jones for my judges, Donna Jones.
I'm considerably shorter than some of these people. This is about growing up at my grandma's house. My mom's mom arrived in Indianapolis right at the end of World War I, 1917, from Conyers, Georgia, where she and her family had been farmers. The woman brought peach trees, plum trees, pear trees. She even brought 2 pecan trees to Indiana. She also had a pretty good sized garden every year, as long as I can remember. So when we were little kids, my grandma's place was the place to be. My parents got separated, formally separated, cleaved, as it were. When I was about 3, there was a converted chicken coop behind my grandma's house. We called it the Little House. It had 1 bedroom, a central gas heater in the living room, and a little teeny tiny kitchen bed, as big as one of these tables. And that's where my mom and I lived for several years. So my grandma took care of me during the week. And on the weekends, my extended family of cousins, the twins, Dennis and Denise, the kids from down the street, we were out in that yard and in that garden because she had a rhubarb that was little candy tomatoes. We had peaches, sometimes even green. That was always an experience after that. But that was the best place in the world to be a kid. We had a slide, we had a swing, we had hills. We created so many adventures. We all had such a grand time. And they never had to worry about us being regular because there were apples, rhubarb, and cherry tomato available all summer.
That was a really good story. Thank you, Donna. I know Jennifer Clay is next. I'm just giving the judges time to finish writing. We are going to pass out the yellow slips. I don't know if they're on the tables or not, because we're going to hold a drawing for one of our books. Okay? And the winners of the slam, I do need to take your pictures before you leave. But right now, Jennifer Clay is going to regale us with the story. Thank you.
So growing up, when my brothers and sisters and I heard that little children's rhyme, Mary, Mary, quite contrary, how does your garden grow? We thought that was about our neighbor, Mary. She had beautiful gardens, and in my mind, she remains the most contrary woman I've ever known. There were 6 of us. I was the oldest. It goes girl, boy, girl, boy, girl, boy. My youngest brother, Steve, is 10 years younger than I am. And this woman thought she was going to enjoy retirement and her garden next to us. and she didn't. We kind of terrorized her, not intentionally, just the way 2 through 12-year-olds might. Playing basketball, the basketball would always go in, the hoop was like right in front of her garden. The ball would always go into her garden. I remember one summer afternoon, my brother and I spent the entire day she had put up a fence, a chain link fence, and my brother and I spent the whole day with a stick through the fence, trying to get her geode to come like close enough so that we could grab it through the fence. We were gonna break it up and make some beautiful crystals together. So anyway, growing up, my idea of a gardener was a crotchety woman who hated life and hated children. And so I went on and after college, moved back to Indianapolis and was living in an apartment. I never felt like I could commit to anything beyond an apartment. And then I met my husband. He already had a house, so I committed to my husband and I committed to his house. And suddenly I had garden beds and I didn't know what to do with them. And I cannot pinpoint when it happened. We've been married almost 11 years. And every year with our garden beds, slowly I've been doing things to them. I too have fallen victim to HGTV. And so I see things and I want them in my own garden. And so I started out by splitting, I didn't know what they were called at the time, but the sedum and the hostas, and started just moving things around and then like planting things and being really excited if they didn't die within a week. And then I have gotten pretty possessive of this garden. Along with the garden, I have 2 children. And I get upset if they know not to pick the flowers from my gardens. They know not to walk through the gardens. I put in stepping stones for them where they can walk. And I have since, again, I don't know when it happened, but now I have 2, the neighbors on one side, they have several cats. If the cats come into my garden, I will open the window or the door and do that. I turn into this like mean old lady. And the neighbors on the other side, I've been annoyed by like the vines and the weeds growing again up against our driveway, and so I've started pulling out their weeds without being asked to, and planting little things and being like, maybe they'll just think they're like wildflowers or something, but so that I can look at the flowers. The point of all this being that somewhere along the line, I became Mary.
Very quite contrary. How does your garden grow? Thank you, Jennifer. That was hilarious. We're going to collect those little yellow slips. Is there anyone else who has a story to tell? All right. We still got time. Say what? It's unusual for us to finish early. We do stuff late. You got a story? Come on, bro. Yeah. Come on, kid. That's what I'm talking about.
We could do an early version of the liars contest if we get through too early, couldn't we?
Well, I think half of these garden stories are.
So we were not the house with a garden. We were the house with mulberry trees, which means that we were very popular because I grew up in that house at the time that, you know, the Vietnam War was winding down, and mulberries make awesome ammunition because they stay your clothes in your skin. And so we were dying daily at 712 Winona Street. But all the houses around us, all the houses around us had really beautiful gardens. Mrs. Peruche grew beautiful flowers, and she had a long row of rhubarb along the side of her house. And the Catarinas had a literal farm grew the best sweet corn. But my favorite neighbor was Mrs. Buss. She was an older woman, a little older than my grandmother, I think. And they lived right across the street from us. And as a little 4-year-old, 5-year-old, I would just go over to her house when I saw her outside, and she would kind of let me help her pick things. And then once she had a big apron full of peas, we'd sit on her front porch and shuck the peas, and she'll let me eat a raw pea or two. And it was just about the most special thing because, like I said, we were not a gardening house. So just this year, for the first time in my life, I moved to a place where I had the opportunity to have a balcony and grow some plants myself. And so I decided I was going to grow a bunch of stuff that I really don't have the conditions to grow. But I just had hope, right? And so all winter long, while I was impatiently waiting to start my seedlings inside, because I was determined to make this happen, I would look up gardening tips on the internet. And one of the ones that stuck with me the most was that as your seedlings grow, they suggest you put a fan for a couple hours a day to strengthen them. Or if you don't have a fan, a couple times a day, just run your hand lightly through the seedlings, and they'll build up resistance, and their stems will grow stronger because they have to get used to the condition of the wind once they go outside. And it stuck with me because I thought, that's really good advice. And I started thinking about places where I need fingers through my life, right, to strengthen my stems. Anyway, I finally put the seedlings outside, and my cucumbers are blooming like crazy, all male flowers, of course. I'm waiting patiently with my cucumbers so I can cross-pollinate. My tomatoes are just starting to bloom right now. I've got basil like crazy. I've got Italian parsley like crazy. And I've got some marrowfat peas. I brought them back from Ireland. And impatiently, and because I overplanted, I've been pinching off the tops. When I go to check my plants in the morning, I'll grab a strawberry and some pea shoots and pop them in my mouth in the morning there when the sun's coming up and it's so quiet outside. And as the plants grow, the thing that I love the most is that when I run my fingers through them afterwards, my fingers smell like the vegetable that plant's going to become. And so we weren't the house with the garden, but now I am.
Now, what time should I be there to help with parks?
I get like 2 strawberries every 3 days. I'm not ready.
Every 2 days, a strawberry. I can handle that. You know, one of the things we did as kids, they had these you-pick farms always. And my mother was one who always canned and always froze vegetables and fruit in the summer, so that in January, you could go to the deep freeze and bring out those fresh peaches and make a peach cobbler. I don't care who you are. You cannot use canned peaches for a cobbler, okay? It is not the same. So I remember my mother would haul us all out to the fields, and we didn't know nothing. We were city kids. We didn't know how to pick anything. But she would bring home green beans, and she would bring home tomatoes. I found out you could take tomatoes and pour them and put them in a plastic bag when it was time to cook a stew. Take that tomato out, run some hot water over the peel, take it right off, and you chop it up and put it in that soup. My mother also loved to take corn on the cob and scrape it off and put it in the freezer so you can have some good old fried corn in the middle of the winter. I mean, canned corn, you can't do the same thing with it. Yeah, they came from the same place, but something happened when they put the corn and the peaches in the cans, okay? Well, now, I look at my friends' garden, and their gardens are just great. And I watched them as they had a little greenhouse, they had the seedlings growing in. I bought a greenhouse. Still got that greenhouse in the box 3 years later. It's out in my sunroom now. There is no reason for me not to have a garden. One year I grew sage in pots on my front porch. And then one year we had a mild winter. And my girlfriend's father was going out the door and he looked over and he said, "Is that sage? It's January." So he told his daughter to go back and see if he could have some. I said, "Take all you want." And one year the sage did not come back. I believe in container gardens, but it's not the same. It's just like when I was learning and I lived in an apartment and I planted strawberries in a little trial. Now, where are they gonna grow? Anyway, this year, one year I grew tomatoes that grew as tall as my house. And people would come to cut my yard. And they would look and say, "Ooh, tomatoes." I had since ceased to harvest them because I found this green thing, caterpillar, growing on my tomato. And I said, "Take all you want because I'm not going back out there." But I do feel sad that my garden looks bad. And I'm hoping that one day I'll go back out there again. I don't think it's going to be 2024. I just hope you don't make it. But at any rate, I want you to know that our next session is July 17th. Okay, it's magic. July 17th at 7 p.m. at Ralston's on Mass Avenue. The theme is scammers and Samaritans. I hope you have filled out those canary sheets so that we could collect them and have a drawing. But I want to remind you that tomorrow night, Freetown Village is hosting the Evolution of Hip Hop Culture in Indianapolis, featuring Wild Style Half Scale at Indiana Landmark Center from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Now start working on your lives for Pioneer Village as the State Fair opens on August 9th. Children's category and adult category. Tell a lie or tall tale in 5 minutes or less. And if you go to our website, you'll find out all the particulars. Are we ready to pull a canary slip out of there? Everybody got the slips in?
Yeah. Are you still taking tellers? No. Do we stop? I'm sorry, I went to the bathroom.
Judges?
Yes, please.
Okay. Sorry, I'll tell one more story. This is what I thought it was.
Sorry. There's been a lot of stories about. Sorry, she called me Samantha. So did she? I'm Shannon Sampson. There's been a lot of nice stories about flowers and gardens and vegetables. My story is weird and sad and unpleasant. When I was a teenager, I worked at Kmart in Marylandville. Store 3180. I worked in the Camry jewelry department, and I learned how to fix watches. I learned a lot about cameras. But in the summer, they would park me outside for the sidewalk sale, and all we sold was perennials and jelly shoes, which tells you how old I am. I didn't know what a perennial was, and most of them were dead. But I sold them. So it just was a lot of hot summers, me sitting there by the cash register just staring at people as they came into Kmart. I remember staring at one young woman, so hard. She was walking in with her boyfriend. I thought he was really cute. I didn't think she was that cute. And that's what I was thinking. And she caught me. She was like, "What are you staring at?" I was like, "Ooh, sorry." One day, a man pulled up to the front of the store, and I was sitting there, and he kept staring at me really intensely. And I just didn't know if I should smile or wave, but I sat there nonetheless. And then he drove off. A couple days later, pulls up again, stares at me intently, pulls off. I remember he drove a Chevelle,
Why do I remember that? Because it said Chevelle on the back window. Next day, he does it again, staring at me. I think you know where the story's going. He looks like he's fighting something in the front seat. I stand up finally, and I walk to the edge of the sidewalk for the sidewalk sale. And I was like, oh my goodness, he's pleasuring himself. And he did it for days and stared at me, and I just sat there. Teenage girls don't know a lot. They don't. And they learn the hard way, sadly, often. So I just stood there, and then he knew I saw him, and then he drove off. Chevelle, cool car. So I didn't even know what to do. So then at that point, a female manager of sporting goods came up to talk to me. And I was like, the guy hadn't pulled off yet. And that's a strange term. Hadn't pulled away yet. Sorry. And I said, that man is. She's like, oh my God. Well, this is why women don't report things, because then it's like this international incident where everyone's involved, everyone's talking to me. Are you okay? The male general manager comes out, he wants to talk to me, and I'm just like, well, I mean, I just saw him in my car, and he comes every day. I don't know if that's literally or not, but I was just like, you know, and they're just like, oh, sorry, Sharon, we're so sorry. And that was about the end of it, really. And so then, you know, let's fast forward several decades, and Me Too happens, and it's like, these kinds of stories happen all the time to young women. And so that was the whole point of like hashtag Me Too. It's like, we all have some weird story. That was even I don't know if that was the first or second time that it happened to me. I got flashed when I was driving up I-65 with my girlfriend in a Ford Escort. Point being, you should probably believe women because we all have some weird story, and mine involves perennials and jelly shoes. Perennials and jelly shoes, I'm never gonna forget it. And I've been in that store. Okay, well, we're gonna have a drawing. I'm gonna give away 2 books or 1 book twice. It's set. Okay. We're gonna reach deep down into this canary yellow sea of forms. We're gonna mix them up real good. We're gonna get this one that's folded up on the bottom. We're gonna pull it out. And the winner is Amy Sullivan. Is that her name? Hey, her name.
Let me do something weird.
Now she gets to choose one. You want to read them. They are so good. From the surprise material, I want you to know. Yes.
Quick story.
Come on. The judges, I will tell you. Tell us your name.
Hi, my name is Rita Beck. And for 7 years, I owned the garden center, so I have a little bit of gardening. But my favorite is when people would come in and ask for specific plants that maybe their mother or their grandmother grew. And they would start by describing it. It's about this tall, and it has green leaves. And wait, was it pink or I think it was purple. And I'm supposed to guess what it is. So I would play 20 questions. Did it bloom in the spring? Did it bloom in the fall? Anyway, eventually we would get to the root of the matter. So, but my favorite is when people would come in and try to tell me what they wanted. The lady came in and wanted a wiggly bush. It was actually a Virginia. But she thought it was a wiggly bush. But we got that for her.
And this is gonna be really quick because, one of my favorites was when somebody asked for an animal plant. I didn't really have any of those, but we did have minis. And we did get that one. But my all-time favorite was when somebody asked for a chlamydia. I will guarantee you do not have that. But we did enter practice.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh, that's
How do you keep a straight face when they ask you those things? Did you keep a straight face when they asked you those things?
I tried so hard. I smiled a lot.
All right.
still does.
Well, gardening is a passion, I think. And you have to be passionate about it more. My mother was one of those people who would talk to her flowers. I'm not. So I think the things I'm saying to them are not nice, so that's why they don't grow. But at any rate, I don't know if our judging is done. I'm going to remind you, July 17th, I expect to see you at Ralston's on Mass Avenue. Samaritans, Scammers and Samaritans. I guess one could be in the story, or the other could be in the story, and they both don't have to be in the story at the same time. I don't know, but that's our thing. You got that, Russell? Yeah. Okay. Almost okay. Well, listen. I hired some people to clear my flower beds. You got to be careful about who you hire. Because if they are there and don't know the difference between a weed and a flower, you will come out and your whole bed will be empty. Now, I know there's an app, or several maybe, where you can take a picture of a plant and it'll tell you what it is. I haven't figured out which one to buy yet, but that's what I'm going to have to do if my flower bed gets cleared out this summer. Even if I just get it back down to the mulch, I'll be happy. Because there are some flowers I don't like at all. And I mistakenly went in and I had a flower bed full of hostas. And what I didn't like about the hostas was that something was always crawling from underneath the hostas. And it was right in my front door and it scared me to death. So instead of me taking them and moving them somewhere else, I just dug them all up. Now I know better, but it won't happen again. Okay, are we ready? Da 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 da. Our third place winner, and I will want to have pictures taken of all of them, is Jack Black. Our second place winner is Tracy Wolf. Our first place winner, it's a tie. It is a tie. And you know, some people will make you, they will write the check out and tear it in half. Give you one half and give the other. But that's not how we roll at Storytelling Arts. Because our tie is Stephanie Edwards and Donna Jones. Wow!